What if I told you the best way to win was to actually try to lose? I know, it sounds totally backwards. But today we're going to dive into this fascinating story about how a plan for a super quick first round exit accidentally led someone all the way to the finals. And, more importantly, the incredible psychological chaos that came right along with it. So this is the central mystery we're unpacking. Just imagine this. You sign up for some huge, high-stakes competition. Your only goal is to get knocked out immediately. But then you keep surviving, round after round, and suddenly you look up and you're in the finals, just thinking to yourself, wait, how on earth did I get here? So how does the situation like this even get started? Well, it doesn't begin with some grand ambition for glory or victory. No, it all starts with a surprisingly simple and very carefully designed plan to fail. Yup, you heard that right. The goal was not to win. It wasn't to make a name for yourself. The entire point was to enter this massive competition and get sent packing as fast as humanly possible. Just show up, get eliminated, and go home. That was the whole plan. Okay, but to pull off this very specific goal of a quick and graceful exit, you can't just stand there, right? You actually need a method. And this is where it gets really clever. It's called the invisibility strategy. The accidental finalist strategy basically flips everything we know about competition completely on its head. See, it's not about outsmarting or outmuscling your opponents. It's about being so quiet, so passive, that you pretty much become part of the background. You just let all the bigger, louder threats take each other out. And the strategy itself is pretty simple. It breaks down into just 3 steps. First, you stay quiet. No big talk, no grandstanding. Second, you stay passive. You let everybody else make the big, risky plays. And the result? Well, you just survive. While everyone else is fighting for the spotlight, you're quietly just advancing, almost like you're failing upwards. And this isn't just some theory, you know? This really happened in a huge MrBeast challenge of all places. A participant named Jaiden fully intended to go home in the very first round. But by just keeping to herself and avoiding all the drama, she watched as all these super confident contestants got eliminated one by one. And she ended up winning the whole thing. Not because she tried to, but because her plan to lose was accidentally the perfect survival tactic. So the invisibility strategy works. You're surviving round after round. You'd think that's mission accomplished, right? Wrong. This is where the story takes a sharp and, honestly, a pretty terrifying turn. Because success was never the goal. And when it showed up, it didn't bring any joy. It brought pure, absolute panic. The problem was the plan was working way too well. The very strategy that was designed for a quick elimination was now somehow a fast track to the final round. Every opponent that got knocked out was just another step toward a victory that was never, ever wanted in the first place. And that feeling that came with this accidental success, it wasn't excitement. It wasn't pride. It was this deep, overwhelming dread. It's summed up perfectly by this incredibly raw quote from the source. I wanted to rip my skin off. I mean, that's the language of terror, not of triumph. So what's behind such an intense reaction? Well, the reality of winning had become a complete nightmare. Instead of joy, there was just fear. This feeling of being trapped in a room full of famous, high-level competitors you never planned to challenge. All of a sudden, the most terrifying thing wasn't losing. It was actually winning. You know that feeling of being a fraud who's about to get found out? Well, it has a name. Imposter syndrome. And it tends to hit hardest when there's this huge gap between our internal sense of self and some big external achievement, especially one that feels like a total accident. It's that moment where you feel like you're being crowned, but not with a trophy, with just soul-crushing self-doubt. And this whole situation just perfectly highlights this massive difference between how we think a winner should feel and how this accidental finalist actually felt. It's a huge psychological divide. So let's just lay it out. On one hand, you've got the classic winner's mindset, right? You're feeling elated, proud. You're focused on celebrating the win. And that little voice in your head is saying, I earned this. But on the other side, you've got the imposter's mindset. And that's all about panic and fear. You're dreading the attention. And that voice in your head is just screaming, I do not belong here. And really, that's the heart of this whole thing. The story isn't some secret how-to guide for winning competitions.
It's a really fascinating look into the complex, often messy psychology of success, and specifically, what happens when you achieve something you feel you didn't earn at all. It shows that there's a world of difference between an external achievement and that internal feeling of validation.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Forget about high-stakes tournaments for a second, and just think about your own life. When is a moment of success? Maybe it was a promotion, an award, or even just some praise. When has that felt more terrifying than the thought of failure? It's a strange feeling, for sure, but a surprisingly human one.